Well, I think it's good to show emotion. Now, like we've discussed, like before, if there's a young kid who's got a teddy and they drop it at 2, then yeah, it's acceptable for them to cry. But if they're about 8 or 10 and they drop their teddy or something, they cry, it's like, oh, that's pathetic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine Princess or Junior doing that. But no, I think it's good to show emotion. Like Junior, like when he watches films, he might cry, but I think that's sweet.
Yeah.
But then if he's too scared to go upstairs to the toilet when it's dark, I'm like, just go upstairs, don't be such a baby. But he is scared of going upstairs. He has to take Princess with him to the toilet. It's pathetic. So...
I'm quite scared to go upstairs to go to the toilet sometimes.
It's not harsh, but I don't think... No, I think it's harsh. You should be what you want to be, but...
Well, I think it depends on age and circumstance.
Yeah.
I think when, you know, toddlers cry all the time, and quite right too, and that's fine, and it's a release like any other emotion. But I suppose when they get older, there has to become a point where you have to sort of say to some, well, OK, I understand that you're upset, but maybe crying isn't the appropriate reaction at this point.
Yeah.
Because the piece that we were talking about by this psychologist, and she sort of said, I learned when it was OK to cry and when it wasn't. Now, she's saying that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because there were times when she was withholding her emotion. But I would say that that's actually a good thing, because, you know, workplaces are hard enough. And if you go into a workplace and you cry every time you're given something a bit tough, you're going to be written off. I'm sorry, you know, whether that's right or wrong.
We used to have one girl work for me. We just called her Tears in the Toilet.
Yeah.
You know, if she couldn't cope with something, she was in the loo having a sob.
Yeah.
Then I had a male secretary who was the same.
Yeah.
And he used the ladies' loo.
And when it comes to promoting them, you're not going to do that because you think, I don't want to have to deal with that. So you do have to prepare people.
But do you think we were saying earlier that they call you hard and me eccentric? I think it's because we have been in this profession, journalism, where you don't show any emotion whatsoever, because it's absolutely not good for you. And, you know, the way I was brought up was... Well, you didn't express emotion, and my father definitely never expressed any. My mother never expressed any, and I don't really express any either. That doesn't mean that inside I'm not crying or inside I'm not feeling vulnerable or scared. But the outside is rock.
But there would be times, I would assume, like, you know, a funeral or whatever, that you feel, OK, this is a time that obviously I'm going to cry. But, you know, that little boy, I think that's pain. And I think pain, if someone's in pain, you know, absolutely cry. But what I'm saying about circumstance, if, I don't know, they come, you know, if they start crying because they're not getting their own way,
that's a whole
I'm not going to have any
thing.
truck with that.
But then it is good to show your emotion. And if I'm with a man that would cry all the time, that would so put me off. I mean, it's nice to show your emotion, but like with the mouth, it would so put me off if a man just kept crying. I'd be like...
But men do this now. This is the big change in the last 5 years. Men have gone all soggy.
Soppy, but not cry. I mean, you know...
They're snivelers. They've turned into a generation of snivelers. David Beckham cries, Ed Balls cry, politicians cry.
It started with Gazza, didn't it?
Yeah,
at Euro
Gazza was he was the first, you know, teary man. And then... loads of men think it's a badge of honour to say, I cry.
Well, they do say that. Real men cry. You know, real men eat quiche and cry.
Yeah, but real men cry, or real men or real women cry when it's a bit like cry wolf, isn't it? If you just cry about everything, when you really are crying and you really are upset, people just go, oh, God, they're crying again. And I think we've sort of become a bit emotionally incontinent as a nation.
Oh, I like that description.
Well, it's a lot,
yeah.
It is a bit, you know... For example, when somebody famous dies and people who've never met them are sobbing.
Yeah,
and
they're going on Twitter expressing their emotions,
virtue signalling.
Yeah, virtual crying, which is blabbering away on Twitter about how upset and moved they are. I mean, obviously, there are times when, like President Obama cried and David Cameron cried over the death of his son, and Obama was crying over a gun massacre. I think that's completely acceptable, and that's almost... it was in both cases, it was dignified and it was expected. But nevertheless, men do seem to have got a bit soppy.
I think what's interesting is obviously we're similar in that we've got boys and girls. And I wouldn't raise either of mine differently. I wouldn't say to Finley, big boys don't cry, but to Amy, that's it, love. You let it all out.
I don't think it's about the gender, is it?
I agree.
It's just,
I agree, and I think it's also about circumstances. To me, there is nothing more irritating, whether it is a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, or an adult or a child. Someone who is crying just to get attention because they haven't got their own way gets very short-shrift.
But then
in my house.
watching a film or something, or on telly, if I want to cry, instead of crying, I'll be like, oh, here we go, the sob story or the panpipe music.
Why?
Just to, I don't know.
She's embarrassed.
Because I'll be embarrassed.
Really?
Because I know that everyone go, because I don't really cry, well, normally was happy. They'd be like, oh, look at you crying. And it would
My
make me
kids
really
do that. They
embarrassed.
switch all the lights on and go, are you crying?
Yeah, so I try and like comedy it off, like, you know.
Do you know, one of the things that I actually find really endearing about Nick is that he lets himself cry. Not all the time, because you're right, that would be really irritating. What, eggs for breakfast? I don't like eggs, you know, that would be terrible. But if you are sitting watching a film, I always know because he goes very still, and then you hear a like that. And I think that's quite nice. But I'll tell you why it's nice, because obviously there's a teenage boy in the room, and I think it's good for him to learn that it is, rather than going, oh, you're crying, which is what Finley does tend to do, to see that actually it's all right for a man. There's a balance, though, you're right, Janet, between, you know...
I've only seen my husband cry once, which was very brief when his mum died.
Who's this, sorry?
My husband.
Oh, right.
And, but the rest of the time, again, he worked in an industry where if he'd sort of blubbed his way through, he would have, you know, you'd find yourself at the bottom of the pile.
Definitely.
And, I don't know, I mean...
There's
I just
nothing
think
wrong with being reserved.
Yeah, you have to be
Where's
realistic.
my quiet sign? It's good. It's good.
For more Loose Women action, click here. And I'd subscribe if I were you. It's totally free, and it means you'll be kept up to date with new videos and exclusive YouTube content.